I'm the speed champion here, and I'm gonna save the world. For a sizable fee, of course. Fee, of course. Of course. Fee, of course.
I wanted to talk about a specific issue that occasionally plagues online matches, that is, leader sniping. Trolls turning around or waiting for players ahead, and then absolutely decimating them. Often this happens if someone is bored, or is working with a friend in second place. Players at the back get powerful items, so first is unable to just get good and deal with getting sniped by triple missile spam or getting pummeled by a musk for 10 seconds. They'll lose all their fire and speed, be stopped from taking shortcuts, and this can go on for laps if not for first place outright giving up on the race. A report system would not be very effective or viable, but sniping is unfair and is ruining races.
I can fix that.
But JC Numbers, you're just going to make it too easy to overlap people. This is dumb. Actually, it's also intended to keep the interaction between players when trying to overlap, but remove the effortless mauling of frontrunners by players who sit back and wait. The player in first might be Entropy, but more likely there are gonna be a Megumi. The other players, of course, are the other 7 Megumis. You take the player who is unreasonably far behind. I'll call this player the Outlier. To stop the Outlier from hurting first, you just disable their items, right? This would work, but realistically it'd be better if Outliers could still use items to catch up.
I can fix that.
Originally, I was going to suggest the Outliers and front players see each other as ghosts and have their projectiles, melee weapons, and collisions have no interactions with each other, but I think an easier to implement solution is just to have the Outliers item auto replaced by a speed item that doesn't deal damage, like a custom turbo or a custom musk. These Outliers are so far behind from even the newcomers to the game that getting these catch-up items from a few item boxes isn't really an issue. The only thing they'd be able to do is body block players in first with their cart, but this could be disabled as well if that's even an issue. The real complexity of this anti-snipe system comes from detecting when people are unreasonably far behind. My quick and dirty algorithm is built with the assumption that there can be 2 people trying to snipe and never more than that. It's also based on casual, 3-lap standard races online. The red color represents players who have outlier checking, and there's a big X for players who are considered outliers and have their items altered. The furthest back 2 players are the ones that get outlier checking. They detect any player 40% of a lap in front of their current location. If there's less than 2 people detected in this range, then this player is considered an outlier. Now let's look at how this would work with different player distributions. This is how it would come into play the majority of the time. The player in 8th is pretty far back from everyone, so they're an outlier. Same thing here, even if everyone is a bit less spread. Now, both players are pretty far back, so they're both outliers. Major outliers are rare, so passing players in general is still going to be just like normal. First place will have a tough time trying to overlap players, which is the way things should be. But if a cheeky ankle biter in 8th who's obviously visited the bottler decides to take a sickie from the race and go out in the bush for a bit of a Macca's run to first, the Bruce ahead won't just be another shrimp slipped on the Barbie. But JC Numbers, you haven't even thought about AFK players interfering with this, have you, you simple-minded fool? Everyone is on lap 2 of 3. Except for this guy, whose quick between match toilet break took a turn for the worse. He's still behind the start on lap 1 of 3. If the player isn't detecting anyone 90% of a lap's distance ahead, then they are considered inactive. The guy can't detect the players who are roughly 175% of a lap ahead because he's still on lap 1. So, since he's inactive, an extra player is given an outlier check. Of course, there are edge cases that are a bit more questionable. My system isn't supposed to be perfect. It doesn't consider the full player distribution and veers more to the safe side of not setting players as outliers. It also doesn't really consider how slow bots are online, though I think a better way to solve this is just to have the AI increase to moderate difficulty when they're far behind. Beanox could implement a more complex system to better tackle the balancing act of when players should be prevented from hurting those ahead. The point is that even this basic concept for outlier detection would largely prevent leader sniping. But even with this in place, let's not forget that these trolls are conniving. The meta would more than likely evolve to relentless honking in the pregnable ears of the victims ahead. But some things just cannot be solved, so we may have to just settle for but a humble item sniping fix.
But JC Numbers, you could item snipe in the original game and that's how it should be, idiot.